Iona, part two. You've spoken really well, Iona. We must so thank you for your time. You're a busy lassie, but you know, we're all putting our heart and soul into whatever we're doing, and I think it all counts. Oh yes, the good thing about this, Iona, whatever we do, whether it be singing or whether it be documenting like I do for Doric TV, oral history, social history, that's what's going on today in the here and now. I got an email from the Elphinstone Institute of Aberdeen University, keen to archive my material. And I said, great, thank you, because obviously things need to be archived for future generations, Iona. And I always think the brilliant thing about video or a recording of voice is that, you know, we have technology now that in 100 years' time, in 1,000 years' time, Iona, we will still be heard and seen. And it means our culture will live on. And that's so exciting, because if you looking back to 100 years ago, there was no facility, Iona. There was only still photographs.
Well, that's for a lot of what I do. I mean, I have the Greg Duncan folk song collection. So all of the ballads and the songs, over 3,000 songs was collected in the North East by Gavin Gregg and Reverend James Duncan, but they just wrote things down. The first guy to record with a wax cylinder in the North East of Scotland was from America. And his collection, the James Madison Carpenter collection, has only been published by the National Library of Congress in America 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we heard for the first time a woman who lived in Lamb Hill near Inch called Belle Duncan. And until then, despite 200 years of collecting balladry in the northeast of Scotland, we had never heard her voice. But thanks to the wax cylinder that was developed and the American guy who went to the northeast, we now have a much wider scope, and parts of the jigsaw has been filled in. So with the advancement of technology comes the advancement of the archive material that we have. And nowadays, I mean, if I go and collect a song from someone, you know, if I'm at a sing around or a pub and I go, right, oh, I like this song, I'm going to collect it. All I have to do is click something on my phone. But years and years ago, there was a conscious effort. They had to take big wax cylinders. Lomax had to take a big, you know, one of the like carry cases. So the jigsaw has almost been filled in from the period of time that we didn't have technology. But from now on, the jigsaw will hopefully always be complete. Like we will always have an overview of our history, our song history. But I'm coming at this in like a ballad collecting scholarship way. There's songs that we have just learned that exist because only one person collected them. So from now on, we won't have that issue, I don't think.
No, we have technology, and that technology will go on, and there is means now, and there will be means in the future that, you know, whatever we are recording now, it will be carried on into thousands of years' time. My gosh, Iona, it's a mind-boggling thing. You know, and when I do my oral history or when I do my documenting of anybody who's doing anything interesting out there or promoting the best of Aberdeenshire, you know, I don't think that people grasp the fact that actually there is a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is we're not just doing this for the here and now. We're doing it for the people that will go after us. And then there will be people after them and people after them. And they can learn from us. It's not by written. It's not always by written, because the written history, as you know, the written history is by scholars. That we are ordinary folk. Yeah. We're ordinary folk. Whether it be singing it, whether it be doing the video thing or just speaking it, you know, it's so irrelevant. Oh, this is so hard.
That's the same with folk song collectors. A lot of the academics and the scholars who created collections would edit a lot of the songs in order to make them better. They would extrapolate and make it extravagant. And Peter Buchan is one of them. I wouldn't trust anything that he'd ever wrote, like ever. Whereas if you've got a collector whose wax cylinder recorded the source singer, you can really trust that because you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth. But academics and historians and whatever, all of them perhaps have written and extrapolated and exaggerated to some extent. So almost the only thing that we can totally trust is, for example, a recording straight from the horse's mouth, you know, because there's not
or advice. And that's the good thing about, we're going back to our advice again, our voice, you know. And well, there is a lot of voices, you know, out there, and it's great that, you know, that we can be heard, Iona, that we can be heard and will be heard in the future. Right. Okie dokie, Iona. Where, just a couple of questions, and I think we should get you to sing, Iona, for Doric TV, definitely. Right, where is Doric in Scotland today, do you think, Iona? I think we briefly touched on that, but where do you think it sits in Scotland today?
Geographically? No.
No, well, we can, geographically, it's in Aberdeenshire and the peripherals of Aberdeenshire, Moray and Cardiganshire, you know.
Or wherever someone moves to. Like in Glasgow,
Yes,
a lot of people say that Glasgow's like the urban Gaeltacht, because so many Gaelic speakers live in Glasgow. But likewise, I know a community of practice of folk that if I met them in Glasgow, I would speak probably in Doric to them, because that's where I know they're from. You know, Quine Fi Bucky, every time I meet her, I don't speak English to her. But I think Doric or Doric Scots, it sits at a very difficult edge right now, because politically we're trying to fight for Scots, but we also want to include Doric. So it sits in a very unique place in the fact that it is different to most other dialects. It's very, very different. I think that a lot of folk engage with it and speak in it and write in it, and they don't realise it. So the number of people that actually speak it is probably much higher than we think. But you know, in pop culture, Doric in Scots is used on Twitter all the time for funny viral tweets. Like, this was brought up in a TV show that aired a few months ago. It was a TV show about swearing in the Scots language and how that kind of goes side by side. But they also mentioned that a lot of young folk are writing in Doric and in Scots very proficiently, like completely proficiently. They write it on social media, on Twitter. The way that they converse is through Doric and Scots, whether that be on like comments sections on Facebook or whatnot. So more folk, I think, speak it than we think. I think that Doric is difficult because it always gets a horrible tar with, oh, you're a tuchter, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that's fair. Like, in terms of where Doric sits in the rest of Scotland, everyone's like, oh, folk for Aberdeen, they speak wild. But the thing is that the person who says that sentence will be saying it in the Glaswegian dialect. So I think the Northeast gets like a rap-in for being tuchter from other tuchters. Like, I think we should just accept that that's how we all speak a wee bit different to your standard English. I think culturally, Doric is completely unique and has, I mean, in the whole traditional music kind of scene, I think it was Dave Francis wrote in a Living Tradition article. Living Tradition is like our Hello magazine for traditional music. Okay, no, I'm not. It's great. It's not a tabloid. It's absolutely wonderful. But Dave Francis, he's basically he does everything. This man, he's absolutely wonderful. He wrote down that there was kind of 4 unique voices in traditional music in Scotland. Now I can't remember what they were. Borders, Shetland, Northeast and West Coast. And the Northeast is one of those 4. You know, because when you hear like a Shetland fiddler, you know it's a Shetland fiddler. You hear like a border fiddler, you know it's a border thing. You hear a West Coast tune and you know it's like West Coast. But then you hear Northeast music and you know it's Northeast music, either because it might be James Scott Skinner, or it might be a Bothy ballad, or it might be a song in Doric dialect. So in terms of music and cultural importance, the Northeast sits in an incredibly good place. Like, it's very much respected. As I said before, in terms of ballad scholarship, everyone just thinks the Northeast is great. Alan Lomax, when he came from America, went straight to the Northeast of Scotland. Like, that tells you something about its place on the world stage for cultural significance.
That is so significant, is that we sit on the world stage, Iona. You know, from my own background of Fairman, as you know, Iona, I mean, obviously, everybody's background and culture is very dear to their heart. Probably more so than mine, because I know that it's a culture. The agriculture in Scotland isn't. It's unfortunately on the demise for various reasons. I know, and I lived on a farm, was brought up on a farm. I'm from a long line of farming people who brought the lands of Aberdeenshire up to scratch and the flourish. You know, and that's one of the things I point out there. You know, that farming feeds the country, farming feeds people, you know, and it's so important, Iona, that, and a lot of that times you think, well, actually, you know, you hear, I'm a chuchter. Am I a chuchter, really? Really? You know, my dad and people like my dad were the most cleverest, and farmers, I know, and so a lot of other people, most cleverest people in this planet, because they work with the land, they work with the elements, they work with their instincts, they work with their culture and background, and all this is cultivated and accumulated into actually helping, you know, the environment, you know. And, you know, I know I'm singing to the converted here, but, you know, and that's, you know, yeah, you're right. Sometimes, and my dad would have felt it because he always put his head down, you know, because he probably would have been somebody, it is when he went to school, he would have been, well, he's a chuchter, he's come to a farm, he's for the land. It's so sad that, Iona, and we need to readdress that highly, because without farming people and fishing folk who will feed the country, the country.
I totally agree. My great-great-grandfather, he was the grieve at Broadlands Farm, which was the one that's mentioned in the ballad Drumdelgi. So great-great-grandfather, he was the grieve, he bade in a cotter hoose. But then his son, it was my great-grandfather, he was the grieve, and then his son decided he didn't want to be a farmer, he was going to be a forester. So that the line stopped there. But I think it's difficult because I've never been on a farm. I mean, I grew up in the town centre in Huntly, but when I get to school, there would be, it's very strange because everything is all in relativity. So I grew up in Huntly, I get to the school, and all the farmers who bade in like Clat, Kennethman, Gartley, whatever, they would call me a tunser because I bade in Huntly. Yeah, because I bade in Huntly. And then when I go into Aberdeen, they call me a chuchter and no a tunser. But when I'm in Glasgow, they call me an ultra chuchter. But it's all in relativity, kind. It's like, you know, if you lived in Huntly, then some of the folk that I get to school with thought that you bade in the big city, like, because you bade in June. So it's all in relativity, but I think it's incredibly important to mind. But, you know, the thing is that the way that I've been brought up, I've never been on a farm, like, ever. Like, I mean, and it's actually, I've always geared towards the traditional ballads instead of the bothy ballads. So the bothy ballads is the aims that are about farming.
Yeah.
They're sometimes quite technical. Some of them are about love, not so much. Mostly got technical aspects of the farm. But the traditional ballads cover a way bigger spectrum. Traditional ballads that I have in my repertoire, some of them are like protest songs. Some of them deal with honour killings, Militif Dizani. Some of them deal about violence and misogyny against women. Some of them deal with postnatal depression and infanticide, when you kill your bairns. Traditional ballads, in its broadest sense, deals with a whole lot more social issues. Whereas I think bothy ballads, they deal with some social issues, but only farming social issues. So I've always been geared towards more of the traditional ballads because as a young female, I am more in tune with the content of them. So I've only recorded about 2 bothy ballads in my career, and I might not do any more, because the more and more I live in an urban background, the more and more I feel a little more distance from them. And I'm sure there's plenty other singers in the Northeast, there's so many of them, that will probably do a bothy ballad better than me. I still do the competitions, that's bra, still go and do it, love it, support that. But in terms of my own like recording career, I love the traditional ballads that really tap into society. But these ballads, Militif Dizani is in Fyfe. You can go and see Fyfe, actually. You can go and see her gravestone from 1673. And this wifey, Agnes Smith, fell in love with Angelami and not the Lord Fyfe. And her family honour kill her out of shame, disgrace, whatever. They lock her in a room and kill her. And that's happened. True story. This happened in Fyfe. You can go and see the mill. You can go and see her gravestone. So apparently that ballad was the most recorded ballad by female source singers in the 20th century. And we know that because of the School of Scottish Studies. So I feel more akin to be singing they types of songs, still for the Northeast, still in Doric, still happened. But I'm kind of, in my own career, I seem to be moving away from the bothy ballads. Yes. But that's natural to me, because I feel like an imposter when I'm singing some of these songs. I don't really, you know, but there's imposter syndrome and everything. Yeah. But, you know, when older folk go, oh, what's that young blonde 22-year-old? What does she know about firmament? Well, the truth is, not much, because I wasn't brought up, you know. So I think I'm moving towards what I know more about now. And I think some of these traditional ballads, like the one I just spoke to you about, they deal with things that are still happening today in the world. You know, it's like, what, 400 years old from the 1600s, 300 years old, but it's still relevant today. Honour killings still happen. Violence against women still happens. Whereas with the development of agriculture, we don't have that tradition of farming. And that means that other people can do the bothy ballads to keep them going, because they really, really need to be. But I think they're in safe hands, because the thing is that the bothy ballad competitions, they have a champion of champions, and I've never been in the champion of champions, so I'm not the person to be singing them, because I'm not very good at them. There's other folk that are way better than them, so I'm just kind of taking my leave of absence of that particular repertoire and moving somewhere else, and I think that's totally fine. I'm going to leave it to mere folk to do, because there's younger singers that are coming through that are like 16, 17, and I'll give them that space and they can do what they want with it. You know, I think it's cool. You can make your own path.
Yeah, that's it, Iona. And I think you're doing the right thing, Iona, because you're just opening up your horizons, Iona, which is great. And it's so heartwarming. As I said it before, and I'll say it again, Iona, for a 22-year-old Quine fi Huntley, my goodness, I think you're doing extremely well. Do admire you. Yeah, And you know, the thing about singing is you can sing your hair to Iona, and you can sing about the good things that's going on in the world, and the happiness and the joy that you can spread through singing, but you can also sing about the injustices there is in the world today. And, you know, it's like a cry out to the universe, help, you know, what we're going to do, you know, so singing is so important, you know. And
you're right, yeah. I think that there's a quote that Woody Guthrie said, and it was, a folk singer's job is to, hold on, I have to remember it. It was something like, you know what, I'll just get it up. It's absolutely brilliant. It completely encapsulates exactly what you're saying there. But he made this quote. Sorry, I'm taking ages.
right.
Like, a folk singer's job is to discomfort the comfortable, but comfort the discomforted. It's similar to that. And it's wonderful. It's a really, really good quote. I'm just trying. He said a lot of good things.
You know, and I'll give a wee plug for the Cruden Bay Folk Club, which I am a member of, and Gordon is a member of. We're just a little folk club in Cruden Bay, and you know, it would be nice actually if we could get out and about and join into more folk clubs and to see what's going on around Scotland, you know, just join together. But obviously at this period of time, it's not possible. So there is little folk clubs, like even the Cruden Bay Folk Club, that they're doing their best to sing their hearts out, and you know, and to spread joy, but also to spread the, you know, the injustices that's in the world today. So there's, even in little circles, I think, Iona, that you wouldn't even expected, like a small wee village in Cruden Bay has got its own folk club. And I'll tell you, Iona, they are really good. They are really good. You know, I just love to go along and listen, Iona, and I just watch these musicians sing. I hear them singing, and I look at how they're playing their instruments. And I think we're so lucky to be able to tap into live music, not just now, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, a lot of folk clubs have done online things, like Salmon Bothy has done online gigs. I found the quote, and it's a brilliant quote, and it describes exactly the fact that singing about happy stuff is fine, but singing about injustices is almost more important. It's a folk singer's job to comfort disturbed people and to disturb comfortable people. I think that sums it up, because, you know, even with that woman, Agnes Smith, her story is still being told today, of the fact that, yeah, there was misogyny and violence and honour killings in the northeast of Scotland. Women were treated as second-class citizens in the northeast, just like everywhere else. And I think that's really important, because I could easily give you like a 20-verse song about neeps. That's fine. But I don't know what... The message for me is important to highlight these injustices. And so many protest singers, you know, about mining songs, or, you know, Frín Camoyi, about our, you know, Scotland's position within the union. You know, I think being a singer, it's your job to spread a message. And if people don't like that message, then they don't have to come to the gig. But in the last few years, I've kind of moved away from like the chronological, like here's a song, this happens in it, oh it's happy, we'll live happily ever after, to more looking at the gnarlier songs within even the Doric dialect. This is still in the Doric dialect when I'm singing it. They're more protesty type songs, or they're more trying to raise awareness about something. I mean, these ballads, the function of the ballads were to tell a narrative story, to warn people, to make examples of things that happened. And I think for me, that's important. But the fact is that Scotland, the Northeast, has got so many great folk clubs. And if it wasn't for like Aberdeen Folk Club or Huntly Folk Club or the Salmon Bothy or whatever, then I wouldn't have really kind of had my first shot at performing live. Folk clubs are so important. And the only issue is that we need more younger people to organise.
Yes,
clubs.
that's my entire thought, because that's actually one of my closing questions. Iona, how do we get youngsters more excited about culture? It definitely has to be through music. One of the things has to be through music, and I think there is what's the word, I can't really say it, and I kind of get my teeth in it, resurgence, you know. There is a new wave of musical interest, which I think is great, that youngsters are taking note that, it's these types of songs and singing is really for everybody, and it's quite cool to be able to sing bothy ballads and Scottish ballads.
I think it's cool. Some people have made it cool. Like, the thing is that important albums have made it okay and accessible for young people to engage with that repertoire. So if it was not for the work of Old Blind Dogs, then some of this repertoire would not be in the light of day, because they were iconic in their first, they've been going for how many years, like 20 years or something, but like they were the first band to really make this music with a contemporary spin on it. So yeah, young people are engaging with this because of certain individuals and or bands, and if it wasn't for those individuals doing the good job and making it work, then young people wouldn't be engaging with it. But Old Blind Dogs were the first to make it kind of cool. Like, or Wolfstone did like a big brass band thing. That's bad. Yeah. But remember, some of these bands probably face criticism from the traditionals, saying, what are they doing with our songs, making them contemporary? I get that all the time. But the thing is that if they didn't innovate, then young people wouldn't be interested. I went to see Old Blind Dogs a few years ago, and they were getting ready to do their encore, their whole night of gigs, and all you heard in the audience was, Ball of Harlaw, Johnny O'Braidislee, Tatties and Herring. Like, people of all generations, so like from like 16 to like 70 or something, were there to see Old Blind Dogs, shouting traditional ballads in their face, saying, please do this one, do the Battle of Harlaw. Their work is iconic in terms of celebrating Northeast culture. Johnny Hardy as well. I mean, they were all kind of from the Northeast at one point, and now they're not so much, but Johnny's still in it. It doesn't really matter, because they're playing different types of music, but they were iconic. I listened to them a lot when I was younger, because not just because they were cool and hip and you could dance to them, but because they were doing cool things to the songs and making them relevant. A lot, you could listen to field recordings all day. I mean, I listen to a lot of archive music where it's just one woman being recorded outside her house with like a wax cylinder, and you can barely make out what they're saying. But when you hear that, and then you could hear the same song done by this old woman outside her house in the 1920s, and then you could listen to the same song recorded by Old Blind Dogs and go, wow, they make that cool. I want to be part of that. And I'm sure, not just Old Blind Dogs, but I'm sure some of these innovative bands have really inspired other young singers to kind of do their thing, or other young musicians. But I think it's important for young people to engage in culture, and the only way, unfortunately, nowadays that you're going to get your like pre-teens, early mid-teens to engage in culture is to merge our culture with the mainstream and show the universalism of it. Because the way that, like, if a kid turns on the TV, they're not actually going to hear someone with our dialect or our language speaking. It'll be like on an off chance that they maybe hear a wee bit of the news where someone's been interviewed or whatever. But like, if they turn on the TV, they're probably going to be hearing English accents or American accents with the media that's on there. So like sitcoms, comedy, unless they turn on a BBC Alba, they might hear some Gaelic and some whatever, but they're not necessarily going to hear many folk for the Northeast doing enough. So if we can show them that actually there are folk from the Northeast that are making their living in TV, music, glitzy business, it's not glitzy, but they might be like, oh, I want to be like that. If you don't see a role model, you don't try and be something. You need a role model.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, going back to the project that I'm that I'm in at the moment, the Doric TV thing, and that indeed is to try in my law, where me and Gordon's doing, is to try in our way to get stuff out there so it does reach an all age audience. And that's why we're interviewing you, Iona, because you are that young age, you are the voice of the youngsters. I mean, look where you have attained to in life, Iona. And that again, looking into a new perspective of our Doric culture, who we are today. That's what Doric TV is presenting. I'm sitting with about 7 videos that I've still to edit and put out there. Now that takes a long time to do that, Iona, but I will work away with it, because I'm in shielding and I've got time to do that in my life. As I say, I do that without any funding or anything, but that doesn't matter. I do it because I just got a passion for trying to help anybody out there to get something from who we are at this present time, to have a platform to stand on in a time where we are wavering because of what's happening with the pandemic and just everything that's happening in the world today. People need a platform to be able to stand on, or we're kind of going like this, Iona. So I try to think of all things holistically, for what we're going to do with Doric TV, Iona, because it's not going to be about one thing, it's going to be about a lot of things, and we hope that we will reach a lot of people.
Well, I was thinking
10-minute warning, guys.
No, I was just thinking, you could have everything that you do could be through the medium of Doric, like Doric cooking or whatever. But
you mentioned that, Doric cooking.
Yeah. What I think is important is that young people who speak in the Doric and speak a certain way, that they no longer feel stigmatized or no longer feel like they're working class because of the way that they speak. Historically, yes, perhaps Doric was the language, or the firm tunes and the language that labourers would speak, but nowadays it can be anyone. I mean, I always feel, as a young woman sitting on a few different boards, I have to go to a lot of different meetings with people from different social classes. I automatically feel a little bit lower than everyone else because of A, where I come from a working class background, and B, the way that I speak, and it shouldn't be like that anymore. So more and more that folks see Doric media or Scots media on the internet or on TV or in music or in iTunes, the more and more they feel more comfortable with their dialect, but also where they sit on a social level, because we should not be thinking that Doric Scots equals working class. It does not. It absolutely does not. I mean, I'm sure there's oil men fast spicking the Doric, but
high up folk, Iona, and there's a lot of high up folk out there, Doric speaking, and that Doric TV hopes to tap into these people. But like the ordinary person in the street, Iona, it doesn't matter who it is to me or to Doric TV, because we're all relevant. We all live and breathe in the same planet. So, but that has been so highly interesting, Iona, to get your perspective on Doric and what we can do out there, especially for the youngsters. And you're an advocate, actually, for the youngsters, Iona, to get them off their mobile phones, intently looking into this mobile phone all the time.
Or be on your mobile phone, but just access things in Doric. We don't need to get them away from their mobile phones. We need to get Doric content on their mobile phones.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Gordon's here with us. Yeah, I know that, because we need to be able to tap into other sources and resources, because for 2 people sitting in Cruden Bay, starting this Doric TV venture without anything but ourselves, it's, where we've come from already, I think is great, but where I'm anticipating we can go, Iona, because, we've got Gaelic TV, we haven't got a hope in getting Doric TV or Scots TV in general, or, what I mean?
Well, we did have the new BBC Scotland channel that came out a year ago or something, and the ratings were very, very low. I think it's because people didn't actually understand what it was, because we were just thought of with BBC Scotland, but it was a separate thing just called BBC Scotland, and they had different content on it, but it didn't work too well. But like the thing is that we're not wanting to beat up any other language. We just want to be on the same level, and like
merge into and to create an awareness, Iona, because in the way that we're looking at the world today, it is a thing, and I know because I've looked a lot into psychology of people and my own psychological way of thinking, Iona, because I went through a lot of double times with myself in my mind. So therefore, I've got into an even keel about looking who I am, where I stand in the world today, and how I see the world, and it's through culture and background. Iona is one of the things, and who I am in myself, and my self-confidence in myself. And I know that's something that I think desperately needs to get out there. Because mental health is really relevant to today because of what's happening in the world. And I just feel my heart goes out to anybody who's struggling this time, Iona, for whatever reason that they're struggling, and this will affect what's happening in the world. It's going to affect people's mental health. And, if we can bring our culture into it, if we can bring empathy, through that, any way that we can help reach out and pass on positive, good messages that, this is a good world to live in.
But this is to help folks' self-esteem, like the mere folk or the mere young folk that be able to see this, and we're legitimising, saying actually speaking like this is more than okay. In fact, it's brilliant. Tap into that. It's going to give folk way more, especially young folk who are quite impressionable, but it's going to give them way more self-esteem about themselves and how they can conduct themselves. You don't have to. Just because you go into school doesn't mean you have to speak all proper. Just because you have to go to a board meeting with other people doesn't mean you have to speak proper. You just have to be yourself.
Yeah.
I better go now because I've got another meeting in 9 minutes.
Oh, we haven't got you to sing yet, Iona.
Okay, I'll quickly sing something, and this is I'll do it's not a bothy ballad, but it's really pretty. It's called "Lonely in the Bothy," and it's a wee short one. Okay. Often I get into Erda, well, the boss said nae a clue. He couldna back a tractor kit, there's nae why he could blue. Therefore I got all the work to do that suited me just fine. And I bade in a little timmer bothy. Oh, the cold winds they blawin' underneath my timmer bothy door, and the moosies they jukin' and out the knotholes in the floor. But that's nae the worst o' being here, discomforts I can thole, but it's lonely at night in the bothy. Well, I'll sort the mannies fancy blues and put them out me pair. And I ken I'm the best showman that ever walked the earth. Mid fin all the judgings are we, and fin all the sellers won. It's back to my little timmer bothy. Oh, the cold winds they blow underneath my timmer bothy door, and the moosies they jukin' and out the knotholes in the floor. But that's nae the worst o' being here, discomforts I can thole, for it's lonely at night in the bothy. Well, I've nae wife to tie me doon, say I'm on the loose, and every night I can be found at all these public house. But ye canna blame a man for taking comforts whiles he can, but it's lonely at night in the bothy. Oh, the cold winds they blow underneath my timmer bothy door, and the moosies they jukin' and out the knotholes in the floor. but that's nae the worst o' being here. This comforts I can thole, for it's the lonely at neck in the bothy. Lonely in the bothy.
Well, you can see the tears rolling down my face, Iona, because you know that's what song does. That's what the words in songs does. Because you aren't just singing for me, Iona and Doric TV. You're also singing for my late dad and the generations gone before him, so that they're not forgotten.
Well, thank you so much for having me. If anyone wants to buy my music, it's on ionafyfe.com/shop. Twa albums. One's the Bothy Ballad album. One's more Appalachian ballads. So yeah, thanks for having me. Cheers.
And give us a plug for Doric TV, Iona. Give us a plug for Doric TV.
Absolutely. If this goes up, I'll share it all on social. There's Doric TV there. Exciting. Oh, brilliant.